Many thanks for staying tuned on the Market Report today. I already have Dr. Femi seated, who will be helping us out to understand one aspect of Nigerian economy, which is the gas resources of Nigeria. Dr. Femi, a very good day and welcome to Market Report.
Thank you.
All right. Now,
thank you for having me.
All right. Doc, can you take us through the narrative around Nigerian gas resources potential?
Okay. Before we go to the questions, I remember when you started, you said energy expert.
Exactly.
No, I won't call myself energy expert. I will say energy affairs contributor.
Okay, energy affairs
because we're all learning every day.
Exactly, exactly.
And to go to the question, you said in your, there are many challenges in the industry. I mean, with what has happened since we've been thinking of maximizing the potential of the associated gas from oil exploration and production, and then the non-associated gas. So this has been on for several years. But the main problem is funding. That's one of the major problems. Secondly, infrastructural deficits. The pipelines are not enough to even transmit or to transport the gas to the necessary location or the required location. The policy or the tax regime we have in the country, maybe because we focus on oil for so many years, so what we have is a situation whereby the tax regime is for oil more than gas, and the price regime for the two are different. So the gas is not really favored with the tax regime we have, so that's why there's a bit of challenge in that. But when we look at that, those are the challenges that I think are the major ones in the industry, and that the reason why the gas sector has not really developed as it should.
Very interesting. Now, talking about the challenges and which you have quite helped us to understand, although we want to, there has been this insinuation that the Nigerian government is not too serious in taking advantage to maximize the potentials of our gas resources. Do you also share in that light?
No, I won't say that. I think government is doing their best, and it's a two-pronged approach, or the way I would look at it is is both yes and no. Federal government has done enough, or they are doing, but it's not enough. Let me correct myself. You have the small-scale LNG of recent coming up. That's a laudable initiative. You have the AKK project. That's Ajaokuta, Kaduna, Abuja. Then you have the OB3 pipeline project. So these are, and then the CNG initiatives. So these are laudable things. So government is trying, not that they are not doing well. But the problem is, Nigeria, the report there is, you said, 209 TCF. I think up to date, we've gone to about 220. And in Africa, where we have natural gas reserves of about 33%, about 1/3 of gas in Africa. And that is proven. The probable for Nigeria is about 600 TCF. So globally, we should be looking at number 3. But right now, we are number 8. So what has happened is, most of what government has been doing, apart from the LNG project, which has been a success story for Nigeria.
Exactly.
That has been the only project we have. And the question, the reason I would say they've not done enough now, let me do a compare and contrast. Nigeria and Australia started LNG around about the same time, in 1989. We are blessed with 210 TCF now. Australia has just 70 TCF of gas. So we are 3 times. But do you know that in Australia, they have 10 LNG plants alone? And globally, apart from the United States, who is #1 gas exporter in the world, or LNG exporter, Australia is #2. They are doing about 84 million metric ton per annum. Nigeria is doing just 22. By the time Train 7 of Benue LNG come up, we'll get to 30. So as at now, Australia is doing 84, we are doing 22. So that's about, we are doing 1/4 of what they are doing. So just look at it, flip it. Nigeria has more assets. We are 3 times more of what Australia has. And then we in Nigeria, we're not doing up to what they are doing. So there's something wrong. So what I would want federal government to do is to focus on the LNG exports, because we have to go back to what Bonny LNG has done for Nigeria. For about 25 years, that it started in 99. I think we got about 114 or something there, about $1 billion as proceeds.
And I think they said at the time that we normally earn at least $8 billion yearly.
Yeah.
For me.
And we've gotten about 15 billion from feed gas, because just for the fact that we provide them gas.
Exactly.
We get about that. For taxes alone, we've accrued about 9 billion. So when you look at that, and then the overall effect to the economy, jobs provided. When train 1 and 2 of LNG started, you had about direct 12,000 jobs created, indirect about 18,000. That's 30,000. Even this train 7 that is just coming up, I don't want to go back into train 3, 4, 5, 6. This train 7, they are talking about another 12,000 jobs. So let's just extrapolate. One LNG has been able to create more than 60,000 jobs. Imagine if we have 3 or 4. Imagine if Brass LNG comes up. Imagine if Olokola. Even if Olokola is too far from where the gas fields are, then we should look for areas where very close to the gas fields, and then site, or we do FLNG, the floating LNG. So that's what I would say. So government is not as if they are not trying, but I think their focus is more on domestic aspect. They've not been able to attract required funding.
We'll get to that required funding that is there, but especially FDI. And the doctor share a particular data with me. We're speaking on that data very soon. But before we get to that data, the PIA. How much do you make of the PIA? Because many have argued that the PIA just concentrated on the crude oil, but you're supposed to cover the entire industry.
Yeah, I think the PIA covered every aspect. And if we look at it on paper, we've done fantastically well in Nigeria. Everything you need to cover, they are covered in that PIA. It's a fantastic document. They talk about strengthening regulatory framework. They talk about funding again. They talk about infrastructure. But for me, the beauty of it for me was the benefits accruing to the host communities. You see, with that, all the hostage takings, militancy, sabotage, vandalism that we had in the past will not happen again. So the fact that we are bringing the host communities to become stakeholders in all these projects is very laudable. So that's why when you look at the PIA, so I don't want to go into too much details of what is in the PIA.
But for the host community, there has been a challenge of the 3% and the 5%. In your own assessment, what do you think they should get?
Well, I'm not a policy maker and I'm not in government, but what they're going to get is something. I always think about negotiations. I mean, you don't have to be stuck in your position or where you're coming from. If they say to you, we have 3% available and then you want to get 5%, keep talking. It's better to judge than to war. At least there was 0 before for those communities. So if there is 3% on the table and you are asking for 5%, at some point you get to
have come to a table and a balanced one. Now, Doc, let's now look at the issue of gas flaring. And it has become you can see the data are very loud. About 14 billion lost, 22.9 billion in total have been lost. What's your assessment? How can we eliminate these wastages in our gas?
Globally, Russia is number 1, and Nigeria is reputed to be number 2.
It's true.
But lately, and if you look at what LNG has done, LNG has been able to reduce gas flaring from 65% to 20% today. So, in the past, the reason why we had that unsavory reputation was our gas was associated gas with oil production. So then a lot of people didn't know what they needed to do with the gas. So they just flare it. But now with the renewed focus on clean energy, climate change, and so everybody knows that they have to do this. And then there are penalties for flaring.
It's true.
So as it is, as it stands today, I don't think any E&P producer will come out and deliberately flare gas. So I think we are improving. But for me, what I always say, we need to make sure that the gases that we have, because what we have in Nigeria today, most of our gases that we are still talking about, they are energy. Oh no, they are associated gas.
Yes.
Our investment is about 66% of associated gas, 33% into non-associated gas, and because they couldn't attract enough investment for the, so we still need to find a way, both energy and AG, to get the required funding for them, and how do we do it? All the major projects. The CNG, the LPG, they are not enough. They are just for domestic consumption. And it will not, or not able, it will crystallize industrialization in the country. But when we are talking about a country of over 200 million people, you need a lot of forex. You need petrodollars to come into the country. And how do you get that? So you need to have LNG exports initiative. That you need to have so many plants. And maybe because I'm focused on the LNG aspect, that's what I keep talking about.
But it's very enlightening, because many Nigerians don't even understand the essence of this energy. Because what comes to people's mind is that, when we have this energy, it is just focused on exportation so that government can earn, forex and the rest of it. But it is more beyond that. I'm talking about bringing foreign direct investors to the country, particularly ensuring that we have enough stakeholders who will participate, organized private sector to participate in this sector. In your own view, how can government get that done? A conference just ended in Abuja. Before now, last week there was a conference on energy in Lagos. There's one here in Abuja. I want to believe that in next 2 weeks we're going to have another one in Port Harcourt. So these stakeholders meetings and coming together, in terms of FDIs, how has it been?
Yeah, you are very right. The NIES that finished yesterday or concluded, I was there for 2 days, and like you said, we talk a lot. And then when you were talking about the PIA, we have so much in place. We don't lack resources, human resources, to give us the necessary policies. But what about the implementation? Now, you ask a good question. You said, what would Nigerian government or President Bola Tinubu government we do to bring the investors and then to support local investors?
Exactly.
I will use an example, or I will come up with few examples. The first one I will do is the commercial service in United States Embassy in Lagos. There is a program they have. I've been with them since 2005. They call it Networking with the United States of America, NUSA. So what it means, the American embassy, which is an arm of American government, will look for investors in America. Then they look for Nigerian companies who are vetted, verified, and they find them credible. So they find a way to join them together. There's a facilitation. So what they have done is, if maybe we're going for a vessel summit to buy vessels abroad, or OTC, for example, you see them bringing some Nigerian companies to meet American investors. So the same thing that we can do in Nigeria. I would suggest that in the presidency, they can have a desk, or let me say an office, that will be a way to look for major companies in Nigeria, the big players, support them, give them sovereign guarantee, and then focus on them more, and then connect them or facilitate with the major E&P. Let me tell you, if you bring all the investors in Nigeria together, and then you bring all the banks, let's say in a club style way or tradition, they cannot fund LNG projects. That's why brass didn't come up. The reason Olokula. These are projects that are in the region of $20 billion. I mean, Dangote did his refinery and is having issues now. He's regretting it, sort of. But what we can do is, if federal government can bring some, how will I put it, some local or major players. I mean, we know them. People like Dangote, Elumelu, Otedola,
Rwanda and Boa.
Yeah. It's a South Korean government did almost the same, or did exactly the same thing in 61, 62. That's why you have Samsung, Hyundai today. They call them Chibos. Daewoo, all of them, they were supported by government. And then there was a protectionist policies for them. They gave them funding. And then today, they turned small companies. I mean, Samsung in 1961 was nothing. Today, they are global giants. They are all over the world. They are even in oil and gas. You hear about Samsung heavy industries. You hear about Hyundai heavy industries. So, if Nigerian government can do exactly the same thing, back the major players, because what we have seen, when there is a oil block, they will talk about they want bidding rounds. Then every Jacob and John, every Dick and Harry will come and bid for this. At the end of the day, they get the license. Then they start hawking
the same license.
Oil license, like Gala on Lagos Street. Because I've seen that. I've seen few people I know, or few people I've seen, they have marginal feed licenses. Today, they don't have they can't get the required funding. So what's the point? But when you look at a major player like Dangote, Otedola, I don't know them, so I'm not advocating for them.
But you're just citing an example.
I'm only saying what has worked elsewhere. So if we can do it, because to attract FDI is not an easy thing. And most private investors, especially foreign investors, they don't want to work directly with government. But they want a situation whereby government is partnering with some local investors, and then they can partner or they can work together with those investors. It happened in Senegal recently. The Grand Tortue Ameyin gas project. When that thing started about 7-8 years ago or thereabout, the Senegalese opposition didn't like it, what Macky Sall did, the former president, that he gave the asset to one guy that was in mining. But the guy was able to get Cosmos Energy from US to partner with him. After that, I'm sure they didn't even know how massive that project was. But at the end of the day, they get BP to come in. There was a bit of controversy initially. But today, or from late last year, when GTA project in Senegal came on board, everybody is excited in Senegal today. They will not think of how the whole thing started. So if we can replicate such thing in Nigeria, bring the top players on board, support them, funding and everything, and then we'll go from there.
It's very, very excellent from you, Dr. Femi. Now, talking about this FDI, there's something Dr. Femi shared, one of the data which will be shown to you on the screen right now. You will help us to elaborate on that data. The first chart will be shown on the screen right now so that we can have a clue of what Dr. Femi is talking about. How can maximize the gas resources in Nigeria? Very interesting chart by Dr. Femi. Yeah, let's have it so that we can quickly analyze it. Doctor.
Okay. So what I've done is I'm saying whether FDI or FDI in the energy sector, the major factors or the dominant factors are the ones, the first three lines after FDI. So I'm talking about political stability. I'm talking about government efficiency. And then I'm talking about corruption-related issues. So if we take it further, they have, so they were, or I divided them into two different aspects. There are attractors, there are deterrents. So from research, investors whether local or foreign, will look at under political stability. Political stability is very, very crucial to them. They don't play with it. If there's problem in your country or you are going through turmoil, war and all that, they will flee. Money is very sensitive. So those are the democracy, good governance, strong leadership, legal framework, rule of law, law and order, social stability, independent judiciary. You see, if you look at Nigeria, we are good from the top. When we get to the last one, independent judiciary, I mean, the jury is out there. Is our judiciary independent? So that's, then we can look at the, can they bring back
the can have chart? The chat back, chart 2. Talking about the chart 2, we can have it back as doctor review. Okay, yeah, it is.
So just like the deterrents, like I stated, conflicts, civil war, hostage taking, militancy, and Nigeria was, I mean, during Obasanjo time, Yar'Adua, the Niger Delta militants, they were just doing what they were doing. And if you are doing E&P projects in Nigeria, even the same company doing the same thing in the same water, Nigeria side and let's say Cameroon, the cost of production in Nigeria triples that of Cameroon, even though you are on the same field. And why? Because of
conflict,
insecurity and all that. So that's one of the reasons. So if you're an investor, will you want to come to Nigeria where it will cost you 3 times more than go to, even though oil, we are the biggest in Africa. Gas, we are 1/3 of the whole of Africa. Every other person comes after us. But unfortunately, you will see investors going to Algeria. You will see Equinor left Nigeria recently. But they are very, very excited to go to Tanzania. What is the gas asset in Tanzania compared to Nigeria? So the reason is because of, so we can look at government efficiency, because I really want to harp on all those factors. Or maybe
I'll take it off from here. About government efficiency in this regard, does it have to do with the management efficiency of government policy, or the policy that government is bringing out that is not implemented?
When I say government efficiency, it involves a lot of things. Regulatory functions, legislation, they are all part of it. Even the economic climate is all part of it. So the government efficiency determines and how the government is approaching the overall everything surrounding the industry. So that's why I mentioned. Yeah.
Very interesting. And you know, one aspect of this government efficiency that we are talking about is that many Nigerians will consider that as one of the bane of the poor activities in the gas resources center or gas resource sector, particularly our focus on the oil, crude oil. For instance, someone once asked me one particular time, why are we always putting our benchmark of our budget only on crude oil? What about the gas? Is there anything wrong with gas price also?
Yeah, because the gas pricing is a bit different from that of oil. And then, well, I'm not a policy maker, and then I'm not in government, so I don't know why they decided that it has to be on crude oil. But they've been doing it over the years, and they are used to it. So they didn't want to change. But that's a good question, actually. Let's look at it this way. We have an NNPC. And NNPC was created because of oil, not because of gas.
Yes.
Going forward, I think Nigeria needs to make a decision of having a different entity controlling gas, so that gas will be on its own, because we've been prospecting oil since 1958, I guess.
Exactly.
Yeah. And oil, we have about 35 billion barrels. Now, with the gas that we have, like I said, even at present level of production of that 210 or 220, for another over 100 years,
it's still available.
It will still be there. And that is the proven reserves that we have. What about the probable, which is 600? So gas, Nigeria is a gas nation, but we are more focused on oil. So someday, And the good thing, the focus of globally, everybody is talking about zero carbonization, decarbonization, climate change and all that. Gas emits 50% less carbon than coal. And it emits 30% less carbon than oil. So whatever we're doing now, we're still scratching the surface because the wealth of this nation lies in gas.
And would you like to support the assertion from the current government who now take the initiative that we need to diversify our economy, at least particularly our transport economy, because I have very talking about transport economy with a look at CNG and other aspects that will help us be able to channel our transportation economy in a way that the clean energy we are talking about, Nigerians will embrace it.
Clean energy, when you're talking about transportation, I don't want to go against what government is doing, but we need to look at safety as well.
Exactly.
And then how many people are using this CNG for transportation globally? I would rather look at a situation whereby if we want to use gas locally, domestic consumption for cooking and all that, then industrialization. And that is where the AKK came in. The AKK is a laudable project which will focus on the industrial clusters in the north. I mean, from Ajaokuta all the way to Kano. That's a long pipeline project. The same thing happened about 30-something years ago in Lagos when the Escravos gas project was sent to Lagos. And good enough, I grew up in a place where that gas was not passed through. It was because of Lagos Thermal Station. So it was a gas to power project, that gas pipeline, because that gas was the feedstock for the Lagos Thermal Station, the biggest power station in Nigeria. So we can use it for industrialization. And I'm sure you know that about some 10 years ago or 15 years ago, Lagos, they were laying pipelines all around Lagos. So at the end of the day, what they did was that same gas coming from Escravos, they extended it further, and then they took it to the Apapa cluster, the Ikeja, Oshodi. So most of the industries in Lagos now are using gas. For me, industrialization is more important. If we want to, when they are talking about transportation, if they want to utilize the gas, we have the GTL project, gas to liquid. So what you get from the gas is the synthetic fuel, like diesel, but it will be synthetic. It will be different from the one that you get from crude oil. Yeah. So with that, then we can now use that, and luckily we have one in Nigeria. It's in Escravos by Chevron. Even globally, we have just 5 GTL projects because it's a massive and then it costs a lot. So we have one here, one in South Africa, one in Malaysia, then 2 in Qatar. So if they want to, because I don't know, Nigeria is a very hot environment, and then you have gas compressed, and then inside
vehicle.
I don't know. I won't go. I won't go for that.
Apart from that, there's other aspect of the economy that gas is very, very good for.
Yeah.
Power, electricity.
Oh
power.
yeah, gas to power.
And there have been politics around that where most times they will say there was gas shortage from the supplying company. That's why we don't normally have issues. Then before you talk about national grid collapsing. In your own understanding as someone in this field, how do you advise government to take the route of this gas to power, particularly electricity power?
I think when we look at it, the gas to power is a good initiative and is one of the best way we can power Nigeria, exactly. We can get electricity. But unfortunately, most of the gas that is used as feedstock, because we have several projects, the GENCOs, like I mentioned to you, Lagos Thermal Station generates about 1,320 megawatts. Then you have AFAM, you have several in the Niger Delta area. A lot of them are not getting enough because I am very sure that Egbe, the Lagos Thermal Station, has never got to its maximum production level, of power generation. And just like every other one, look at Olorun Shogo in near to Papalanto, then you have the Omoto Show in Ondo State. All these are projects that needed gas. Yes. But today, the installed power generation in Nigeria is about 20 megawatts. How many are we wheeling out? Maybe about 5,000.
I think there was an improvement of 5,300 this last week.
But Nigeria cannot rely on the same thing that we've been doing for decades back. So the ones that we can do, so we need the gas. And the decision makers, policy makers, stakeholders, they need to find a way to get the gas to the end users, the ones that will use it. And then when they produce or generate the electricity, they should be able to transmit it. I don't want to go into too much details about that. But if you centralize in 2025 and you still centralize your transmission of electricity, then you have the result that we have.
Although there is a law that will unbundle that sector right now.
Good.
But I also appreciate that when President Tinubu came on board, he appointed an essay on energy. I know she was also at the program that the Energy Summit, Mrs. Lou Virgin, and she has been very specific on the project of the government on gas, particularly gas. But in your own understanding, how can we encourage, particularly in our office and the government, because as if what they are doing is not enough for Nigerians to see the benefit. I will cite one example. There was a time that we had issue of a high price of cooking gas, and there was this challenge between importation of gas and local consumption of gas, particularly from NLG. And NLG say, okay, they can only give 30%, and importers say they can give entire Nigeria gas. But because of that, there was an increase in cooking gas in Nigeria. And but she came in, but recently we have seen the surge in the price of gas again. What's your advice to them?
It's all about policy. It's all about decision making. The government need to understand, I'm sure they know,
exactly,
that energy access is important. Sub-Saharan Africa as a region suffers from energy poverty. About 600 million inhabitants in Sub-Saharan Africa do not have access to energy. And that is why there's so much poverty in this region. And when I mention Sub-Saharan Africa, Nigeria is part of them. So I didn't want to make it like it's only Nigeria. So we need to understand that until we make energy so cheap or accessible that people have access to it, that they don't have to depend on firewood to cook, and then they don't have electricity. They don't. So it's very, very important. So what they need to do is to maximize what they have. You have the resources, and I'm sure if they look for investors and they are able to show to them that they really want this thing to be done, people will be keen to come in and do it. But as it is now, we are not doing enough. And like you said the essay wants to do this. She is an advisor. She can only advise. Implementation still rests with the executive. And you have to look back. We've had several leadership, or we have different presidents in the past. Why is our situation this way? Why do we have just one LNG plant in Nigeria? Why do we have a lot of investors leaving the country in droves? There is something really wrong. But I don't want to sound like I'm here and then you are criticizing what government is doing. We have to look at what they are doing, the best they are doing, and then just suggest in our own limited view on what can be done going forward.
I really love the way you have put it in our own limited view to suggest to them what you think they can do. Now, going forward into the discussion, because I've gotten to the level that we need to begin to provide solutions to some of the identified issues in our gas resource maximization. One of the things I personally have discovered is the inconsistency in government policy. Doc, do you agree with me? There is inconsistency in government policy. Now, you made mention of the NNLG. Why do we have only one?
Yes.
It was not the plan of government to have one. But inconsistency has made it this way, that it is only one. Even though the NLG, people are still saying they need to just do things to ensure that this works for us. And you said something very critical. You said, we have NNPC controlling oil and gas. Why don't we have another separate agencies entirely for gas? But President Tinubu came in and did something very novel. He had a minister for gas and a minister for the crude oil aspect. What do you have to say further in this regard?
Yeah, that's from the executive arm. But for the industry, they are different because sometimes you still see overlapping. I mean, when you have Minister of State for petroleum and then you have Minister of State for gas, it's still those overlapping of functions. You need to have an entity for gas. Now that we've identified gas as an asset, we should not treat it with levity. It's not, so we should not lump it together with gas and then, because if you have a separate entity controlling gas, what you have done is a lot of policies will be geared towards, and then the tax regime will change. The regulatory functions will change. The legislation for it will change as well. It will be focused on it. And then we need to look at what happened in Qatar. What did they do? How did they do it? It's a small nation. As a 1970 something, it's around 76 or 77, Qatar didn't do anything about gas. But America came in, they invested, and today they are number 3. They share second and third with Australia. So this is what we need to do by embracing what has been done elsewhere. And like I said, I will only talk about the way I see it and how I feel they should do it. I don't want to sound
like a critic.
I won't do that.
I think you have done so well on this regard, talking about how to maximize the gas resources in Nigeria. I really want to thank you, Dr. Femi, for coming on the show. Being your first time, but we hope when I call you once again, you still make yourself available. I know you are coming from a far place, but with your expert and insightful perspective on this issue, I think you are someone that one can call to always come to dissect the gas resource center in Nigeria.
Thank you
so much.
Thank you.